This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 637.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster.
Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Philby, host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have two next weekend. WordCamp Portugal in Porto. It is May 15th and 16th. I would imagine long-time WordPress royalty Bob WP will be there since he lives there now. I'm guessing he's going to be there. So if you run into him, say hi. For me, I've met him, dozens of times over the years when he lived in the States. And anyway, great guy. Also, next weekend is WordCamp Slovenia. That is a single day camp, May 16th. So if you're in that part of the world, say hi to people there too. All right, so that's it. Moving on, segment one in the news. Two things here. First of all, WordCamp US 2026 has been, it's still on schedule, August 16th. There's a call for people to get involved. It's open for sponsors, speakers, volunteers. It's going to be in Phoenix, Arizona. It's going to be nice and hot. So there you go. And check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes for that if you want to get involved there. And lastly in the news, WordPress 7.0 released candidate 3 is out. And one of the big takeaways there is that real-time collaboration, or RTC, will not ship after all in WordPress 7.0. Apparently it just wasn't ready enough. It wasn't baked in. There's some issues. So a lot of people are happy. And some people are sad about that. I mean, it looked like a pretty cool thing, but just wasn't ready for prime time. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's still on the schedule now to be released. Do we have an actual release date? May 20th. Oh, so yeah, about a week after this episode comes out. So that's looks pretty good. So I think that's the new date. So cool. All right. Is that in the news? Yes, that is it in the news. All right. Moving on to segment 2, the meat potatoes of this week's episode. So this week, I want to get a little nerdy, not super technical per se. We're not going to dive here into, server configs or command line stuff, although I love a good CLI command line. But I want to talk about something that affects pretty much every piece of software we use these days. Open source licensing. Yeah. And before you think, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of legal paperwork and your eyes glaze over, just stick with me for this, okay? Because it's important. Because this actually connects to you more than you might realize. And it did for me. Yeah. I mean, WordPress and plugins, yes, but it connects to us in so many more ways these days. It also includes SaaS products, AI, ownership, subscriptions. And to be honest, whether you truly control the tools or not, how it affects you. I mean, do you own the stuff that we're using? Anyway, lately, this conversation has been heating back up from my point of view, from what I pay attention to online, especially with companies changing policies, locking down ecosystems, and moving things behind subscriptions. We see it all the time. I read things all online about it's being open, but it's not really being that open, different platforms. So this week, all that being said, I'm going to break down the major open source licensing categories, what they mean, why they matter, and how this connects back to WordPress. Okay, so first of all, most people hear open source and think, ooh, cool, free software, right? And yes, but sometimes that's not true. Open source does not mean no rules, no ownership, no obligations, or do what you want forever. Okay, those are just, that's not what it means. Every open source project has a license attached to it. And that license basically answers the question, what are you allowed to do with the software? Can you modify it, sell it, redistribute it, build commercial products with it, keep your changes private, host it as a service? And that's where things get interesting. So let's start with the easiest category, permissive licenses. This includes things like MIT, Apache 2.0, and BSD licenses. These are basically the, hey, have fun license. They're very relaxed. You can usually use the code, modify the code, sell products using the code, include it in proprietary software, basically do almost anything you want as long as you leave in original attribution and the license notice in place. Let me say that again. You have to leave in the original attribution and the license notice in place. So for the MIT license is very popular in JavaScript. Apache 2.0 is similar. but it adds patent protections. Now, BSD is also similar, though there's a 3-clause version that has some language about not using contributor names for endorsement, which is interesting. Overall, these are very business-friendly licenses. And a lot of startups love permissive licenses because they encourage adoption. It's basically take this and go build cool stuff. Now, on the opposite side, we have copyleft licenses. This is where the WordPress world enters the chat because WordPress itself is GPL licensed. By the way, GPL stands for General Public License. And GPL has a very different philosophy. The idea is if you improve or modify the software, those improvements should also remain open. Make sense? Okay. Meaning you can absolutely charge money for GPL software, but if you distribute the modified versions also remain GPL. Okay. It's kind of like, parent-child. The child gets ideally the attributes. If a parent gets stronger, the child gets stronger. Okay. I kind of want to use that analogy. Anyway, this is why WordPress has for years and years have debates around premium plugins, redistribution, plugin clubs, forks, ownerships, and the spirit of open source versus the legality of open source. There's a big thing there. There's always these debates, right? So it's one of the reasons why WordPress became so huge, because the GPL protected the ecosystem from being completely closed off by one company. Now, some businesses love GPL, and some businesses are absolutely terrified of it because GPL has become sometimes called a viral nature, meaning the openness carries forward. Now, there's something called weak copyleft, things like LGPL and MPL. And again, I didn't know what those were until I started doing research here. And these are sort of the middle ground licenses. The basic idea is you can connect proprietary software to this without needing to open source your entire app. And this becomes useful for libraries and frameworks. It's basically trying to balance openness, flexibility, and commercial reality. And then we get into what's probably the most interesting modern license category, another one I had never heard of, AGPL, or it's called a network copyleft. This is where things get very relevant to today's world because the original GPL was written long before cloud computing and SaaS products took over everything. So back in the day, software was distributed physically or downloaded locally. Isn't that crazy? On floppy disks, cassettes, floppy disks, 3.5, etc. You get zip drives. I'm dating myself here, but that's how it was kind of distributed. Now companies take an open source software, modify it, run it entirely on servers, and technically never distribute the software, which created what people call the SaaS loophole. So AGPL came along and basically said, nope, we can't do that. If you modify AGPL software and run it as a network service, you still need to share those modifications. And this is where modern conversations around AI, hosted platforms, cloud apps, developer tools, managed services start getting really spicy, okay? Because now we're debating, what does open even mean anymore? And this is where I started thinking about the topic again recently, because I've been watching some videos by a guy named Louis Rossmann over on YouTube. He's become a major voice around right to repair, ownership, consumer freedom, and closed ecosystems. His content's amazing to me. I watch it all the time. And one recent discussion involved Bamboo Labs in the 3D printing space. Now, this isn't really about attacking one company. It's bigger than that. The real conversation is what happens when companies build communities around openness and then slowly tighten control later. And we're seeing it everywhere. Hardware, software, SaaS, AI tools, smart devices, cloud ecosystems. I could go on here. But you buy something, you build a workflow around it, but do you actually control it? Can you self-host it? Can you repair it? Can you export your data, right? That's always been the thing with WordPress. Ownership. Can you modify it? Using it if a company changes directions. Those questions matter way more than they did 10 years ago. And of course, this all connects back to WordPress in a beautiful way because WordPress itself sits in this really fascinating middle ground. WordPress is open source. The plugin ecosystem is heavily GPL influenced, but businesses still need to make money. So what are customers paying for? Not the code itself, what they're paying for, and I've always known this, you're paying for updates, support, hosting, convenience, documentation, ecosystem, and trust. And that's a really important distinction because sustainable open source is hard. Everybody loves free software until it's time to maintain it, or support it, or fix bugs at 2 a.m., or deal with security patches, or answer support tickets from someone running PHP 5.0 on an old server from 2011. Anyway, and now AI is making this even messier because suddenly now we have open source, open weights, closed APIs, hybrid licenses, hosted AI models, self-hosted models, and many companies just use the word open in very different ways. Some things are truly open source. Some are source available. Some are technically open-ish. And while controlling important infrastructure behind the scenes, and I think this conversation is only going to get bigger over the next few years. So if there's a takeaway from this episode, it's probably this. Open source isn't just a technical detail. It's a philosophy. It's about ownership, freedom, collaboration, sustainability, trust, and long-term control. Okay. And even if you're not a developer, this stuff really does matter because the tools you build your business on, your content, your workflow, those choices have consequences. So maybe, just maybe, take this week, take a look at the tools you rely on most and ask yourself this. Is this actually open source? What happens if this company disappears of something you might use from them? Can I export my data? Can I move away if I needed to? Am I paying for software or am I paying for convenience and support? Because those things are very different. And, honestly, it's one of the reasons I still appreciate WordPress. For all the chaos and some of the drama and opinions that are out there, there's still something really powerful about software that people collectively build together. It's just amazing. And even if we occasionally argue about licensing for something for 14 years straight, whatever it may be, it's okay. We can still kind of figure this out, and it's a community. So that's the takeaway. Just take a look at the tools you rely on most and kind of make sure you understand where you fall in the use of those tools from that licensing perspective. I hope this helps. Kind of a broad topic here, and we could talk for hours on this. And I've seen people go on for hours and hours on this online. I don't need to go on any further. Okay, moving on. Segment 3, tip and tool of the week. And this tip, it's not a tool, it's a tool. It's once again, fan friend. I guess how do I want to word this? Anyway, it's FlipQuiz.io. It's out by Marcus Burnett, friend of the show, a good friend of mine. He had this about 11 years ago, I think he said, and he had to shut it down, but he's bringing it back, and it's awesome. So it's called FlipQuiz.io. Check it out. And there's a free level and a pay level, and I think you'll appreciate it. So there you go. All right, moving on. If you have any questions, let me wrap it up here. Go ahead, send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use that SpeakPipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon, buy me a coffee, support the show with Patreon. There's links there. If you want to sponsor the podcast, you can do that as well. Form on the website, fill it out, I'll get right back to you. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right, bye-bye.